Hey everybody, it's Charlie from Daily Motor, and I've been spending the last week with this Genesis GV80. It's a little bit refreshed for 2025, but it still offers an incredible value play here in the luxury midsize crossover segment. And yes, even at $81,000, this is in many regards considered a value because between the size of it, what it offers you in terms of luxury and functionality, and compared to a lot of its competitors like the BMW X5 or the Acura MDX or the Mercedes GLE, this provides a lot of that luxury, if not a little bit more in some cases, with a lot less of the price. So in today's video, I'm going to tell you my takeaways with a week with the car, and we're going to put it on the Daily Motor leaderboard. So first things first, to start off this review, we're going to have to go inside. And I think Genesis already knows where this is going. And I know it's low-hanging fruit, but it is very, very important because, well, we let our door soft close for us. Very, very good luxury feature there. We bring the car on. We're not going to start it quite up yet, but we see this gorgeous, large, unbroken infotainment screen. Now, some people really like that look. I know Alyssa said it makes the car look really nice and sleek and high-tech. Other people think the design is a bit uninspired. But this is actually the most important aspect of it, and this is here because this car does not support wireless CarPlay or Android Auto. And this really is unfortunate for a 2025 model year car, and I know it's something that's probably really high on Genesis's list of priorities in order to remedy, but you've got wireless device charging, and you get in this vehicle, and if this is closed, I mean, this is a gorgeous interior. It's very, very nicely designed. It's symmetrical, it's clean, crisp, great materials, and then you have to open it up, and you have to drag an unsightly cable through it and plug your phone in and then put it in here somewhere in order to get phone projection. If you're on a longer drive, that's not too big of a deal because you're going to want that extra juice, maybe keep the temperatures down on your phone instead of wireless charging. But if you're just hopping in to go to the office or something like that, I know Alyssa likes to keep her phone in her purse. I like to keep my phone in my pocket, and it's cumbersome to have to get it out, plug it in, just to get your phone projection starting up. And on top of that, this is not the most high-tech or responsive infotainment system. Now, it's fairly easy to use. I like the setup, I like the functionality, and there is a lot I like about it. We're going to talk about that later in the pros of the car, but there have been a lot of aspects that I go into settings or making adjustments here in the system, and there are delays and there are aspects that don't feel nearly as crisp, whether it's from a resolution standpoint or a responsiveness standpoint, as other luxury vehicles. And we really saw that this week with the voice commands. Yes, just yesterday. This is a great thing about having cars for real world sort of situations like this. This was sort of a perfect storm that really shows off the issues with not having wireless CarPlay and Android Auto, along with the weaknesses of the voice command. Yesterday, I needed to finish the sound test for this car, and to do that, I have to have a USB stick plugged into the one USB data port up here. Then the one on the right is simply for charging, so I had to be plugged into the one on the left, which means I couldn't have my phone hooked up for Android Auto. But Alyssa and I needed to go somewhere, so she tried reading the address into the voice command here, and it took 3 different tries for it to hear the address properly, and then even after that, using the vehicle's baked-in navigation, it ended up taking us to the wrong side of the road because we were giving an address, and it kind of gave us 3 different addresses, all similar, and we just pressed one, and we were on our way. Whereas if this had an Android Automotive-based infotainment system or wireless Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, I simply would have been able to say, go to this place that we're going, and it would have popped right up and away it would have gone. So the infotainment looks good and overall its basic functionality is there, but when we're talking about top-tier luxury vehicles, it's a step down compared to a lot of the competition. Next, this one is going to sound remarkably petty, but for some reason, nearly every Genesis product I've gotten into over the last year or two, the seating position doesn't go low enough for my preference. And the first car I noticed it was the all-electric, electrified G80, and I gave it a little bit of a pass because I figured there's a big battery pack underneath, and so the seat had to be a little bit higher, fair enough. But this car, it's subtle, but I cannot get the seat to go low enough. Even with the individual center, kind of the butt up and down functionality here, I just haven't quite been able to get the seat to go low enough. And you do get used to it. It's not the end of the world, but it is strange if you're going from car to car to car. You get in the GV80 and you just feel like you're sitting a little bit high up. For the next con, we got to start it up. You hear that 3.5 liter come to life, and it is a bit of, I don't want to go as far as to say a disappointment, But when you're getting into luxury vehicles like this, you are competing against some absolutely top-notch powertrains. You get into something like a BMW X5 and you're greeted with a 48-volt mild hybrid inline 6. You're greeted with another V8 option. You're greeted with a plug-in hybrid option. And in the GV80, you get a 2.5-liter turbo or a 3.5-liter turbo, both of which are competent, but not spectacular. And so you get situations where you come to a stop in this vehicle and you have automatic stop start, which shuts the engine off in order to save fuel while idling. That's fine and great. But then what happens is the motor's got to start back up when you get going, and you have a very traditional, commonplace car feel of the vehicle rattling itself back to life with a 12-volt starter and then getting going again. Whereas if you were in one of those other luxury competitors, most of them, maybe not necessarily at this price point, once you start getting just a little bit higher, they have very, very butter smooth 48-volt mild hybrid systems that you can barely even notice that the engine has turned back on. So let's see if it happens here at the stoplight. I've come to a stop, I'm looking around. Oh, engine's off. And it's certainly not bad. It's a lot smoother than the Acura MDX that we had last week. But when we're talking luxury vehicles, especially with how nice the interior is on this car and how quiet and refined it is, to have an engine rattling itself back to life like that, a bit unfortunate. And that leads me into the next con: no hybridized powertrain. I can absolutely forego something like having a twin turbo V8 in this car. Yeah, the X5 is impressive with the fact that you can get just dummy amounts of power with that car, but at the end of the day, if I'm buying a car like this, I actually appreciate that it's just focused on luxury. I don't need the sport performance. What I would like, however, is the smoothness and the efficiency of some sort of electrified option. At the minimum, a mild hybrid system. That's what pretty much every player in this game is moving toward. But even better, give me some sort of full hybrid option, because hybrids are smooth, they're quiet, and they're efficient. I've had this car for 200 miles, and I haven't done a crazy amount of idling. A lot of my test vehicles I have to idle to shoot many videos and stuff, and I have done that a little bit. But 17.9 miles per gallon with this car, I know a lot of people in this class, you know, they're okay with spending a little bit of extra on fueling, but that's really not great from a cost standpoint or environmental standpoint, to be burning that much fuel just to be doing very casual city type of driving that I've done with this car. That being said, Hyundai and Genesis are really leaders in the full electrification game, so I could see them essentially moving away from gasoline powertrains altogether and just putting their eggs in the EV basket, because they do make some very, very good EV options, like the electrified GV70. So I'm not too surprised that maybe they're just saying, all right, we need to just make competent enough ICE combustion powertrains and then focus on EVs. We'll see if that works out for them, but all I know is that this isn't the most refined powertrain option. The last con gets into Genesis as a brand. I am looking around me right now, and you guys can't quite see it, but I know there's a nation-leading Mercedes-Benz dealer right over there. There is a BMW/Rolls-Royce dealer about 10 minutes that way. And there are Audi dealers, and there are Lexus dealers. I couldn't tell you where the nearest Genesis dealer is. And I know Genesis is working on building up their dealership network, but it's just a fact of owning a Genesis right now that you're going to have a more limited dealership network than you would with a more traditional auto manufacturer. And on top of that, some people simply buy cars and brands for the prestige factor. And Genesis really doesn't have that much prestige yet. Now, I can tell you as an automotive journalist who gets to drive all sorts of vehicles that this car has so much going for it, and that Genesis is a brand that's really doing amazing things. But for some people who aren't really in the car game and they're just kind of driving cars around for more of a status symbol, some people are willing just to pay the extra to have one of the established brands on the front of their car. They couldn't really care less if the Genesis does it better at a lower price. And if that's you, I don't really have much to tell you other than, yeah, I mean, the Genesis is still working on establishing themselves, and this is how you do it. But I understand if you want to show up to the country club and have the 4 rings on the front of your car instead of the Genesis wings. For our first pro with the GV80, we got to get back outside, because look at how nice this vehicle is styled. When it first came out, I believe for the 2020 model year, the GV80 looked so good in this very nicely balanced way. It's got the striking luxury elements that you need for a car like this, and mind you, this one is remarkably dirty. Some birds have had their way with pooping on it. But it's got the luxury elements you want and need, the little bit of chrome bits, the nice intricate styling, the beautiful paint options. But then also it's nicely reserved and subdued in different elements as well. It's got a nice flowing shape. All the design is coherent. I mean, it is one of my favorite looking cars. It's not just the GV80 anymore. It's pretty much the entire Genesis lineup. I think looks fantastic. And that exterior styling fades into the interior as well. It's a beautiful combination of this dark blue. Alyssa described it as a, what did she say, like a charcoal sort of color, gray aspects with the speaker grills, and this nice white leather with the white seat belts. And it's a mixture of both the materials used, the design language. It's all coherent. It's not like a vehicle where they just kind of threw everything at the wall and hoped that things would look good at the end of the day. No, this is a really well thought out and designed vehicle from the ground up. And from there we move into pro number 2, and that is the use of materials and the feel and the build quality of everything in here. Nothing squeaks and rattles. Everything you touch. I mean, this leather right here, it's buttery smooth. It makes it so that I want to be wearing short sleeve shirts so I can put my arms on here and just feel the smoothness and the suppleness of the leather. You feel it, you smell it. Everything you use works properly, is nice. No piano blacks down here. Very, very well thought out by Genesis. Even the engine stop-start button looks and feels good. The combination between what you feel and use and what you look at, everything works so well in this vehicle. Is very, very well thought out. And quick side note on these center console things, even at $81,000, these are heated. That's a feature that I pretty much have only experienced in Mercedes and BMWs. Right here, though, you turn the heated seats on, and you feel it in your arm, and you just go, that's good. And on top of the styling and the use of materials, we get to the third pro, and that is the straightforward usability of the GV80. Between these nice physical controls on the steering wheel, and then with the infotainment, the ability to both touch it as a touchscreen, but then also use this rotary knob. And I have used both of them throughout my week because there's certain functionalities that just make more sense to reach up and touch, and depends on what your driving situation is. Maybe you're stopped at a light or cruising with the adaptive cruise control and the active lane keeping, and it's easiest to reach up. But other times you're driving in a little bit more of a serious traffic situation, and it makes more sense to just take little glances down at your screen and use the rotary knob and take your time to make adjustments throughout this infotainment system. So even though it's not the most advanced infotainment system as we talked earlier, the functionality of it works really, really well. And then you get to things like this rotary knob shifter. Instead of taking up this whole area right here with just some sort of big grab shifter, or giving you a column shifter, which admittedly I would have liked, but Genesis decided not to go with that. They have this nice rotary shifter which keeps it compact and allows you to have other functionality throughout the center console, but then still gives you a nice and easy to use shifter. Right for drive, left for reverse, center for park. They stuck a nice subtle drive mode selector down here with nicely flanked buttons around it, and actually remarkably large cup holders. I've been able to put my 32-ounce metal water bottle in here and have the feet hold it. It's deep enough so that it doesn't tip over. The functionality in this interior is really quite good. And I will say, because this one's all-wheel drive, or for whatever reasons, there's not a ton of places to put things. It's a fairly small center console right here, and this is pretty much only going to be used for either wireless device charging or maybe putting one phone. So I could go for a little bit more general practical space storage, but all things considered, the interior is very easy to use here in the GV80. My next pro, now that we're out on the road, is that all of Genesis's products, since they've begun, have focused on luxury, not on sport performance, not on trying to be a car that can lap the Nürburgring and then also have massaging seats. No, the driving experience in here is simply luxurious. From the soft closed doors to the heated center armrests to the smoothness with which the car departs from stoplights. It's a luxury, calm, boaty, smooth sort of driving experience from point A to point B. Aside from what I pointed out earlier with some of the jerkiness from the stop-start, this car is focused on just being luxurious and in no way sporty. And I really appreciate that, because journalists and magazines that go out and measure skid pad performance on luxury vehicles have gone very far in ruining what it means to be a luxury vehicle. Nowadays, you got luxury cars probably like that Mercedes right there that's going to focus on trying to be fast and quick and light on its feet, as well as be comfortable and supple and smooth throughout day-to-day driving. Genesis says no. No, if you're in a GV80, you're supposed to be calm and detached from the driving experience, and that is also what I want and appreciate from this vehicle. And the last pro comes into sort of the inverse of what I said earlier when it comes to the dealership network and the limited badge prestige of this car. The flip side of that is you also have uniqueness. If you're somebody who doesn't want to show up to the country club or to the grocery store or the vehicle pickup, whatever it is, with one of the same vehicles that everybody else has, if you want to stand out and be a little bit more unique, that is where Genesis can come into favor for you, because you get one of the best luxury experiences at this price point, and you get a badge and a vehicle that many people are not going to be as familiar with, and it's going to look a little bit more unique and borderline exotic compared to just having another Lexus RX or another BMW X5. But what it really comes down to is that what you want? And unfortunately, here in the American market, so many more consumers are simply, it's a little bit harsh, but I'm going to go as far as to say sheeple than people who want to stand out. A great example for that, and to distill it down a little bit, is look at your standard Android versus iPhone debate. There are so many people who just simply use iPhones because it's what they're used to. They know the product. They know it's simply going to work. And so they're willing to pay more and get less. I watched a tech reviewer the other day that said, yesterday's innovation for tomorrow's prices, when talking about the new Apple iPhone 16 lineup. And you kind of see that with Genesis as well, in that this is a car that does things so much better than a lot of the stalwart luxury brands, but yet some people are just going to go, but I know I can go down to the Lexus dealer and get this RX, and I just know what I'm getting. So you kind of get into that concept of the 9X effect, which is that in business, you have to show customers that your product is 9 times better than what they're using in order to convince them to switch. And I don't think that needs to be entirely the case here to get people into a Genesis GV80, but it is something to consider that this product not only has to be better than everything that's out there, but has to be significantly better in order to convince a lot of casual buyers to go out and find a Genesis dealer and pick one of these up, as opposed to just turning in their lease and picking up something new from Lexus or BMW or Mercedes or Audi. And I really do like the Genesis GV80. I know I really like a test car when I look forward to going and doing my daily errands with it. Because at the end of the day, I get to drive a new car every week, plus we have Alyssa's car and my car that I both like as well. So for me to have to go and do daily errand running or go somewhere and actually look forward to driving the car that I've got that week, that already tells me that there's something good about it. But before we wrap up, we've got to put the GV80 on the Daily Motor leaderboard. Looking at the current leaderboard now, we've got Kia EV9 on top, Hyundai Ioniq 6 below, and Toyota Tacoma in third place. And ranking luxury vehicles like this is always a little bit tougher, because I like to look at my ranking list with kind of 3 main criteria. How is it to own, how is it to drive, and how well does it execute its purpose? And purpose is a little bit of an ambiguous topic when it comes to more luxury vehicles, because it's not simply transportation like something like a Toyota Corolla Cross or a Mazda 3, and it also doesn't have quite as explicit of a purpose as something like an LC500 or a Toyota Tacoma. But I have really appreciated this car, and I think I know where it's going. I think it's going to be moving up into 5th place, right here behind the Mazda 3. Sorry, that's 6th place. 6th place behind the Mazda 3 and above the Toyota Corolla Cross. And the cool thing is a lot of the complaints I have about the GV80 are subtle and easy to both overlook and remedy. They can easily have wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto somehow figured out for 2026 model year, or admittedly, can even get a little dongle and just have it sitting in here and then kind of make it work on your own in order to be wireless. And things like the powertrain, they could easily introduce a hybrid powertrain for next year, or I know it's going to create a little more work, but switch over to a 48 volt architecture, or you can just drive around and have the auto stop start off. You can't really solve the fuel economy too much, and the seating position, I don't know, maybe that's easy, maybe that's tough. But ultimately, the pros of this car have vastly outweighed the cons for me. So despite its little annoyances, I have loved having and being in the Genesis GV80, and I love seeing how Genesis continues to grow as a brand. So thank you all so much for watching. If you do want to see more on the GV80, check the link below. We've got a dedicated review of the Bang & Olufsen sound system and a little bit more coverage that you can find, and we'll see you on the next one. I'm Charlie from Daily Motor, and as always, drive on.